Welcome to the Team Us podcast. We're Ted and Ashley Slater.
As couples, we all want to win in marriage, right? And I don't mean in a who's right and who's wrong sort of way, but together as a united team.
Oneness in marriage isn't always easy, though. Sometimes it's really hard. It can be a struggle to stay connected and face the difficulties of everyday life together.
And if we're not intentional, it's easy for the us, the you and me, to quickly become you versus me.
Well, this podcast is all about marriage as a team and how to live the everyday moments of your marriage together. We'll share honestly and humorously with you about the betters and the worsts of our marriage. You'll hear how grace, commitment, cooperation, and lots of laughter have helped us stay united.
Plus, in every episode, you'll also get some practical tips and tools to apply to your marriage.
We want to see your Team Us win. We're cheering you on, so let's get started. So Ted,
Yes.
This is our very first podcast episode.
Number 1, episode 1, season 1.
Right. Did you ever think we'd be recording a podcast together?
I certainly did not.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I don't really listen to them unless we're like in a road trip and you happen to have picked out a couple of podcasts from NPR or something. But I don't really listen to them, so I never imagined you and me doing this. But here we are.
Yes, and I'm excited. I think
too.
it's going to be fun.
I think so.
Well, on this very first episode, we're talking about another very first.
That's good.
The very first married couple, Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve.
And I like to call them history's most notorious couple because I think when we hear their names, a lot of us think, oh yeah, well, there's a couple that really messed up.
Right, the fall.
Right.
That's a big mess up.
Big mess up. But here's where our conversation might be different from a lot of other conversations about Adam and Eve. We're actually not going to make our primary focus about how they messed up.
Okay.
Instead, we're going to talk about how, the fall did impact their relationship, but we're going to talk more about them pre-fall and lay a foundation for what makes a good team. Because when God created Adam and Eve and put them in the garden together, he created the first human team. They were a God-created, God-ordained pair. So I think as couples who want to do marriage as a team, we can learn a lot from them.
Of course. That's a great idea.
Yeah. But before we do that,
Yes, my dear.
I thought it would be fun to talk about our first, some of our firsts, just to kind of let our listeners get to know us a little better since this is the first episode.
Like first piece of sushi or first
No,
Thai food or
like our shared first. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to throw one out there and we're going to see if, our stories are similar.
Okay.
Because it's been a while since some of our firsts.
That's right.
Okay, so first time we met.
First time we met. I'm going to say it was either church or college, although I don't remember specifically. I should remember.
You do not remember?
I do not.
The first time we met.
I would like to say that the clouds parted. I heard angelic voices singing, but that would be a lie. So I'm not going to say that.
Well, I really can't give you a hard time because I don't remember either. And I actually talk about that in the book Team Us, that
All right.
I don't remember the first time we met, which I think really kind of, blows that myth that
Love at first sight.
Love at first sight.
Right.
It blows that out of the water. It because that's not.
At least in our instance. Maybe it
right.
happens.
It might. Not for us.
Not for us.
But, Okay.
Yes.
So I'm thinking church. I think we met at church. Probably a mutual friend
Right.
introduced us. And it went from there. I think the second time I met you, I thought, oh, he's interesting. Like interesting in a good way. But
Do you remember church, like when I would be playing in the worship band and I would look out at the congregation and find you?
And my friend and I would be like, who is he looking at? Is he looking at me? Is he looking at
Oh,
you?
my goodness.
What's he doing? Yeah. Okay. Well, you're going to get they're going to get lots of interesting stories like that on here. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Another first.
Yes.
Our first, not our first date, because we're going to talk about that next time.
Okay.
But our first kind of date.
First kind of date was when I said to you, I'll see you at church next week. And you showed up. And we met at church for church.
I don't remember that either.
No.
No, I'm just kidding.
That's not really a kind of date.
No,
That's just
no. This was, remember, a deli and lots of cucumbers.
Sliced cucumbers, pickled cucumbers, not to be confused with pickles, which are pickled cucumbers, but they're like slight. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
And I'd eat them when I was feeling awkward or uncomfortable, and I'd just keep.
It was kind of amusing.
Yeah.
I could tell when you'd get nervous because you'd eat another
slice of
cucumber. Because it was kind of like this.
Pickled cucumber.
It's a kind of date because it was like, okay, so.
It was you and me.
It was you and me, and it was like, let's see, I'm kind of interested. Are you kind of interested? Although,
Was
do you
that-
remember what you said to me?
That was when I told you what Eric, our singles pastor, had told me.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Eric, I was friends with him for years, many years. And he knew that I was interested in you, and he got to know you over the months. And he said to me, he said, Ted, you should just marry the girl. Or ask her to marry you, or something like that. Marry the girl. And I shared that with you.
I don't know why you felt compelled to tell me
On our
that.
first kind of date, not even a real date. But
Maybe just to see the shock on my face. I will say, I do remember that you followed it up with, don't worry, I'm not going to propose yet, or something like
my
that.
goodness. Yeah. I'm not going to ask you to marry me today.
Yeah. So we don't recommend that if you're listening and you
That's why I
happen
was
not
eating so
to be
many pickled
married.
cucumbers. It was like, who says that on a
But-
first kind of date?
I mean, it worked out. It worked out for
It
us.
worked out well.
Yeah. All right, let's do one more.
One more.
How about first time we held hands?
First time we held hands. Okay, well, we need some context here. Because I had a track record of failed relationships. Do you want to elaborate or no?
Oh, well, he was engaged twice before me.
Twice.
So, third time's the charm in our case.
That means 2 broken engagements. Yeah, that was... Anyway, because I recognized my failure, I was like, this has to be... I need clarity. I can't have anything interrupt my ability to discern God's will about our relationship. So we had decided to minimize physical touch. And one of the ways we did that was by not holding hands. And yet, your dad told me to hold your hand.
Well, now you need more context.
Okay, so we were at a restaurant in Florida, the whole family together, and I was there. And he said, hey, let's pray. Let's hold hands and pray. And we looked at each other and we were like, do we? Because this is breaking our rule.
I mean, it wasn't a legalistic rule.
No, it wasn't
But,
legalistic.
and I guess he
Oh,
didn't
it's kind of
realize,
legalistic. I don't know.
maybe well, it wasn't.
It was helpful.
The heart
I
of
think
it
so.
was to help us be clear-minded.
Right,
So,
clear-minded.
so yes, we did end up holding hands. Mm-hmm. And we have a fun story.
And we still hold
to tell
hands.
about it. Yes, we do.
Mm-hmm.
Very often. So, good.
So any other first, or you want to leave it at that?
Let's leave it at that.
All
I'm
right.
sure other firsts will come up in other episodes. So, but let's get back to today's topic then.
Today's topic is Adam and Eve.
Right. It's
First.
marriage as a team and how the first couple, Adam and Eve's marriage story, informs and impacts our marriage stories. So I think most people probably know the biblical account of Adam and Eve, recorded in Genesis chapters 1 to 3. But Ted, just in case, why don't you give a short Ted recap, as
Yeah.
I'll call it.
I got to say, I love the first few chapters of Genesis. I mean, the whole Bible's inspired and it's awesome, of course. But the first few chapters, I think some people consider it prehistoric. But we've got the history right there. It's God decided to create Adam. And then Adam tended the garden. He had animal buddies. And all of his animal buddies had special relationships with other animal buddies. But he recognized he didn't. So God, in his providence, gave him a woman. And they had a great time. And then one day they didn't have a great time. And the rest is, shall we say, history.
Right. Exactly. Well, it's funny because I grew up a PK, pastor's kid. I mean, you know that, but our listeners might not. And so I grew up with that story.
Right.
But it was after we got married that I dug a little deeper into it and started to see something in it that I hadn't, that Adam and Eve were a team, not just a married couple, but that those two things went together. And it was
Couple
actually...
and team?
Yeah.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Married couple and a team.
Sure.
I think that you should be a team if you're a couple because there are certain qualities and characteristics that a team has that marriage needs.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me interrupt you here. We're talking about the first human team, but I'm remembering that there was a team that existed before the first human team.
Yes.
And that would be the
go on.
Godhead. That would be the Trinity. That would be the, God who is triune and enjoyed fellowship within himself somehow in a mysterious way that I don't understand, with the Holy Spirit, the Son, and the Father. So there was a team right there. And together they created the earth and humanity and stuff. So I just find it fascinating that team and community and relationship has always existed. Right. Because you can be, we could be a couple and not be a team if we are not on the same side. Fighting together. Right. Against the enemy. Well, and I guess that's a good way to kind of go into talking about some of these qualities that I think we see in Adam and Eve. Okay. Pre-fall. These qualities are still valid after the fall. They were just harder for them to walk out. Put in practice. Right. So the first one is actually unity. Unity. Right. Okay. Because they had a common purpose and goal that they were working towards together. They were united in what God had given them to do. Right. Well, the scripture says that they became one flesh. So they were in more than one way unified in mission and purpose and taking care of the earth and being fruitful. Right. Well, that's what, in Genesis 1:28 and 29, God says, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every other living thing that moves on the earth. Apparently not. And so I think as we take that and we go, okay, unity, common goals, most of us can look at our own marriage and say, okay, we came into marriage with common goals. It's possible some of us are struggling more than others. Right. Years into marriage to remember what some of those are, because sometimes we hit hard seasons that can blind us to the unity or make unity hard. But I know for us, one of our big goals was to grow together spiritually. That's right. Which is, as a Christian couple, that's foundational. Right. Right. Yeah. When I was, as mentioned, I had a couple of failed engagements. And so I found myself thinking, what is the purpose of marriage? Why am I going down this route and messing up? What's the purpose? And I found myself thinking, maybe selfishly, that the purpose of marriage was to help me spiritually and also to help identify and carry out. I sound like I'm reading something, but I'm not, because I went through it so many times, but to help me identify and carry out God's will for my life. And then I would do that for my wife. I would try to help her spiritually, because that's like, relationship with God is like the most important thing. And then to discern and carry out his will. So. Right. Yeah. And I think that was something that attracted me to you also, was your desire to grow closer to God. Okay. And to see our relationship be one of the vehicles in which to do that. So it wasn't just my crazy hair. Oh, I love your crazy hair. Okay. But, Okay, so they were united. So we see that unity is a characteristic or a quality of a good team that I think God intended for that very first team. Yeah, of course. But, you can have a united goal, but in order to accomplish a united goal, you have to cooperate. You have to work together. Is that the second point? So that's the second one. Cooperate. Now, when you say that word, I like breaking up words. I like words. So I see cooperate. You're operating together. Right. How is that different from unity? How would you say that's different? Well, I think unity is having a shared purpose, a shared goal. You're on the same page. But that's different than actually the day-to-day practice of walking out that unity. Oh, okay. And so I think you have to work together, you have to cooperate in order to see that united purpose come about. Okay, so it builds on the idea of being unified in purpose and goal, and then you cooperate together toward that. Right. Okay. Yeah. And Adam and Eve, they had the garden to tend, and kids to raise. I guess they didn't discipline them so well, because some of them, at least one of them, didn't turn out so well. But there were some. I guess we can't blame the parents for that. Right. Can't always do that. No, there's always grace. Yeah. And all of us
have to, in our marriages, figure out how to take those goals that we have decided are common and cooperate in order to accomplish them, right? I mean, we might not literally be tending a garden, but I mean, we have 4 kids, so we can be on the same page about what we want to do as parents, but we have to cooperate in the way we carry that out, because I think this is interesting. We could be on the same page on what the goal is, the end goal, but we might have different ways of getting to that end goal.
Sure, I've heard stories of like father and mother that have different like, what's it called, discipline approaches.
Right.
One might be a little stricter, one might be a little more soft or timid, and sometimes that can cause some conflict.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think cooperation goes hand in hand with unity, and seeing that those goals accomplished.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Is there a third one?
Well, before we get to the third one, I also want to notice,
yes,
or not notice, but kind of point out that I think as couples, we can also cooperate in not so great ways too. So we have to be aware of that, because I think if you think of Adam and Eve, I mean, sure, they cooperated to tend the garden and have kids, but a lot of theologians say that they think Adam was standing right next to Eve.
Right, I've seen the paintings.
Right, yeah.
They were right next to each other.
Right.
And the snake was in the picture too.
Yeah, so I mean, all 3 of them were there, according to
and they cooperated to really mess things up.
Right.
For themselves and for everybody around them.
Right. And I can see how, I mean, I can tend to like to vent sometimes. Okay. And I think that you are very good at listening, but then not letting me go too far without reminding me of truth from Scripture, or to maybe take a different perspective that's more gratitude filled. But I mean, you could just jump in right there and vent with me, and we'd be cooperating, and it would not be life-giving. I mean,
there's a place for me to affirm your grievance.
Right. Sometimes I need you to listen.
Right.
Yeah.
And say, what you're experiencing and what you're grumbling about is, justifiable or whatever. But if we both sort of pile on each other, we can, maybe burn relationships that didn't need to be burned.
Right.
I can encourage you, just unfriend them, talk trash about them to your other friends. Yeah. But that would be cooperating and not so healthy.
Right. Right. So it's almost like there have to be these checks and balances, maybe, when it comes to our cooperating. Okay. So number 3.
Number 3.
They were committed. And I say this fully knowing that Adam and Eve had a, if you were stuck on a desert island with one person kind of situation. But they were committed to each other. Even after the fall, they still stuck together. They were committed to what God had called them to do. And so I think that as couples, it's good to remember that even when things get hard, because we all go through seasons in our marriages where things are harder, or we might not like each other for a little bit.
I don't know what you're talking about.
We'll get to that later too. Not in this episode,
no, not
but
in this episode.
I think it's good to remember that God made us as couples, as teams, to be committed to each other, even when the going gets tough.
Sure, Adam and Eve both could have thrown up their hands and said, "I cannot believe you ate that piece of fruit. I cannot believe that you lied to God when he was asking about what happened." They could have just walked away, I suppose. I mean, there wasn't, another spouse for them because it was them, but they could have walked away from each other, but they didn't. They stayed committed.
Right.
They walked it through, committed for hundreds of years.
Well, and I'm thinking too of before the fall. I mean, God said this is, or, you'll leave your father and mother and cleave to your spouse. Right. I mean, that shows that God intended there to be this commitment.
Right.
Also.
Right. Right. And you bring that up, and I'm thinking that, in a sense, kids are on the same team as their parents. It's like this family team. And when you do get married, you leave that team, you form a third team. Right?
Right.
It's kind of a cool way to think of that.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. But as spouses, you're that original team. we have looked at Adam and Eve as the very first team.
Human team.
Human team.
Yep.
Good. Thank you.
No.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very first human team that God created and ordained. And we see that in their relationship, they were meant to have unity and cooperation and commitment. And I think as couples who are striving to be team-minded.
Right, the way that God intended.
Right, the way God intended. We can learn a lot from that. So, okay, so at the end of every episode.
Should we do something practical?
Yeah.
Okay.
Super practical.
Do you have a name for this?
Yes, this is called an Us Time Challenge.
Us Time Challenge.
So we want to give the listeners, those of you listening, an Us Time Challenge that you can do after listening to this episode. And I thought it would be fun to tie in a show that is very team related, The Amazing Race. I mean, Ted, you remember when I thought it would be an awesome idea for us to apply to The Amazing Race?
Yeah, you've had a lot of awesome ideas. I was kind of opposed to it. In fact, I said, did I just say no?
Yeah, he said no.
I don't want our relationship to be under camera, the focus of any camera.
Yeah,
whatever.
it would have been a very refining time for us had we been under both of us. So we did not apply.
You did not.
And looking back, I think that was probably a good idea. But, okay, here's what we want all of you listeners to do.
Yep, this is your homework.
Right. Oh, that sounds so
this is your
high school.
Home
This is your
play.
Your challenge.
Challenge.
It's
we
your
challenge
team.
You.
It's your team challenge.
There you go.
This
That's
week
good. Okay.
to complete.
So what is it?
Okay. So The Amazing Race, it's still, I think there's a current season, or there was recently. It's also on streaming. So watch a couple episodes from the same team, same season, because you want to be able to observe the same teams.
Right. Understand the way they relate to each other and find yourself resonating with one couple or find yourself not really liking another couple.
Exactly. And as you do, as you have those feelings towards the different teams, think about why. And then think about, as we have, what would we be like as a couple if we were on The Amazing Race?
Right.
How would we have navigated that? And be real honest and be open. This is not a time to critique and criticize each other, but it is a time to be open to each other's thoughts on, ooh, I could see me doing this and you doing that.
Right. There's some couples that complain or that gripe or accuse or all these negative things.
Right.
And then there are other couples that are great and that affirm each other and cheer each other on.
Yeah.
And so we're asking our listeners to what again? To maybe identify things in their relationships?
First think about which teams
that you like
and why, what it is about their teamwork. And then think about what you would be like if you were facing those challenges together as a team, and how, be realistic about it, because that will help you go, okay, well, we could grow in this area, or maybe we could do better with our unity, or maybe we're united, but we're not cooperative. Or maybe we're not as committed as we should be.
Because you would assume these couples are all united, right? That's in winning the prize.
Right.
And then as far as cooperating toward that end, and what was the third one again?
Being committed.
Being committed to each other toward that end. That's good. That's really practical.
Yeah. So anyway, do that.
That sounds fun.
Have some fun with it. Don't let it create any fights.
Or if it does, make up.
Right. There you go. So, well, that's it. That's our very first episode.
Boom.
Yeah. We hope it was encouraging to you.
It was fun for me. I hope it was fun for the audience.
Yes.
Audience.
I had fun.
Do we say audience?
I think we say listeners.
Listeners.
They're our friends.
Right.
They're sitting at a table with us.
We're driving down the road.
Right. Yeah. It's like we're having coffee or...
There you go.
Yeah. Over the airwaves. The podcast. I don't know. Anyway.
Yes.
We hope this was encouraging to you. And remember that we're cheering your Team Us on.